wounded in a terror attack, and when I was with my then 3-year-old son, and we're coming back from Jerusalem, and we were halfway back from Jerusalem on our way back to Shiloh, and halfway home suddenly there's a massive hail of bullets on the car. The car went completely dead. We were coasting down a hill, and the bullets are flying. I saw 4 orange sparks in front of my eyes. The car was completely dead, coasting down the hill. I felt a bullet go into my left leg. The blood started coming out almost like an open fire hydrant. I quickly tried to stop the blood flow. It wouldn't start. The blood was coming out massively. I turned the ignition. The car was dead. Then I remembered I had my 3-year-old sitting behind me in the baby seat. I turned around to him. My son's name is Reuven, or we call him Ruby. I said, "Ruby, are you okay?" And his eyes were wide open. His mouth was wide open. I could see that he was breathing. There was no blood on him. So I assumed he was okay, but he looked like he was trying to cry, and no sounds were coming out of his mouth though. So I figured he was in shock. I quickly tried to start the car, turning the ignition, shifting gears, park, drive, neutral, trying every way that I could to get the car to start. The car was dead. The bullets are flying. Finally, on the 5th or the 6th try, the car started. And I don't know how it started. It started as if it had never had a problem starting before. I hit the gas and I drove nearly 120 miles an hour to get to the next community up the road, which is called Ofra. And finally reached Ofra. I start shouting at the gate. And all the communities in Samaria have electronic gates in the front of the community, and the purpose is to keep out car bombers. I start shouting at the guard at the gate, "Ambulance, get an ambulance." He didn't seem to hear me. Then there was a young woman on the side of the road. She started jumping up and down, screaming, "Ambulance, ambulance, don't you hear?" At that point, everyone who was within sound reach came running over to the car. Some teenagers from the bus stop, a gas station attendant came running up to the car, and he ripped off my shirt. He wrapped up my leg to stop the blood flow. He said, "I'm also a medic, I know what I'm doing." And he said, "Here, take my phone, call your wife." And I couldn't dial, my hand was shaking too much. And he dialed it for me. He gave me the phone. I told my wife, I said, "Lisa, I've been shot in the leg. Hopefully an ambulance will soon be coming to take me to the hospital, and Ruby is okay." Well, she said, "Okay, somehow I'll try to get to the hospital in Jerusalem." And she hung up. Just then the ambulance pulled up. The medic from the ambulance comes running out of the car. He runs out of the ambulance. He runs up to my car. He starts pulling my son out of the baby seat. I said, "No, leave him alone. He's just in shock. He needs to be with his Abba. He needs to be with his dad." He said, no, sir, I have to take him out." And he pulls him out of the car. He starts running to the ambulance at break speed, shouting. He's also been shot. He's been shot in the head. A bullet had gone into his head where the skull meets with the neck. We later found out, causing a skull fracture and internal bleeding in the brain. They quickly wrapped his head with bandages around his head, put an oxygen mask on his face, whisked both of us on stretchers into the ambulance to take us to the hospital. And I tell the story not because of our personal trauma, because there are a lot of families, many families that have suffered far worse than us. And thank God my son survived the attack, and I survived the attack, and we're both able to function fully today. But I don't just tell the story because I have any sort of political message to deliver, even though I have my own opinions, obviously. I tell it because it's a story of miracles. I was shot in my left leg, even though the terrorists were shooting from the right side, which enabled me to drive my automatic car to get to the ambulance, because of course we use our right leg when we drive automatic cars, and my left leg was not usable. The bullet that went into my son's head and through his neck missed his brainstem by 1 millimeter. On my 5th day in the hospital, I'm laying there in my hospital, and I get a call from the car mechanic, and he says, David, this is Erez, we have the car, we've started ordering parts, it's going to be very expensive to fix, there are 49 bullet holes in the car. So I stopped him right there. I said, Erez, I'm not doubting everything you're telling me, but I haven't even thought about the car. The car is the farthest thing from my mind. I don't care about the car. He said, I'm just calling to ask you a question. Then there was silence on the other end for a few seconds, and he said, why can't we start that car? And a chill went down my back, because I know that the car went dead. I know I tried to start it 5 or 6 times, finally getting it to start while the bullets were flying. We got out of there, we got to the ambulance, and now he's telling me he doesn't know why he can't start the car. And I have to tell you, up to that day, I've always had a little bit of New York skepticism when it came to personal miracle stories. But I'm not a skeptic any longer. We just carried on God's wings to get us to that ambulance. And after that day, my completely ordinary life here, if we could call it that, out here in Shiloh, turned around, and I was given a new mission in life to help the children here, who to a great extent have lost the innocence of childhood. You go into the schools here and you'll see all the smiling faces, but underneath those faces there's a lot of trauma. And when my son came back from the hospital several weeks later, he was screaming, he was waking up screaming at night. And he didn't know why he was screaming. He was just screaming at the top of his lungs, almost like the cry that he wanted to make after he was shot in the car. At that point it took me a while, but I started the Shiloh Israel Children's Fund to help the children who've been so traumatized from the terrorism. So we support therapeutic projects, educational projects for the kids here in the Shiloh block of communities in Gush Shiloh and beyond. And that's become what I do full time. Once we decided, okay, we're going to establish all of these therapy programs, then we realized we have to build a suitable building for this. So we got some partners, we got different organizations, and we got everyone to work together to make this building happen. And now we're supporting it basically together with the parents. In the book of Judges is, and there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in his own eyes. And in Shiloh, when Shiloh was reestablished in 1978, for many years there were a lot of individuals with a lot of strengths and a lot of talents, but everyone was doing what was right in his own eyes, and people really weren't working together that well. And one thing that we've managed to do in the past few years is to get all of these people who come from all around the world, from Israel, from different countries, to work together. And for the sake of the children and for next generations here in the heartland of Samaria. So we have the therapy programs, we have the therapy center working together with the horse farm, and the horse farm and the therapy center working together with the different schools here. Everyone is cooperating.